a lot. And I like Avery Keene, the main character, and this is what, the third with Avery, right?
It is. It's Avery's third outing.
And While Justice Sleeps, that was the first one, right?
Yep.
And but you don't need to read those two to love this one.
Yeah.
We can start anywhere in the series. So looking back a ways in your journey, your mom and dad had kind of you can be anything mantra, right?
Absolutely.
And it's so important, and it's almost worthy of a book or a whole lot of things, or maybe we could talk about it a lot more, not just your mom and dad, but in general. For me, my grandmother, we had this thing, hungry dogs run faster, and that was her one of her things. And then go chop some wood, which is go out and do it, and somebody who believes in you. So clearly, with you and your siblings, you got a professor and a judge and a biologist and a social worker,
Yep.
and
You've
then
done a
whatever the
lot.
heck you are,
You've
you know,
clearly done your
novelist, a little bit. So tell me about that a little bit, how that works, and because I really think it's a big subject for an awful lot of people in their lives.
So I'm the second of six kids. My parents are both the first. My mom is the first of her family to finish high school. And
Uh-huh.
she not only finished high school, went off to college, grad school twice. So has a master's in library science and master's of divinity, and went from being a college librarian to being uh, a United Methodist minister. My dad is the first man in his family to go to college, and
Hmm.
he did so despite being functionally illiterate. My dad grew up, with dyslexia in Mississippi during the Jim Crow South, and so they didn't
Hmm.
diagnose him. But my dad has this amazing oral memory, and he memorized his way through school. When he and my mom met when they were 16, she helped him along, and they
Uh-huh.
went to college. He eventually ended up getting his master's of divinity as well. And so both of my parents raised us with this very ethic that said you cannot be stopped unless you stop yourself. My dad's way of saying it is
Uh-huh.
don't let anyone tell you no. Like
Hmm.
he said, well, actually, the way he put it was never tell yourself no, let someone else do it. And
Hmm.
my
Hmm.
mom
Hmm.
would tell us, if you want to know it, go look it up. And when your
Hmm.
mom's a
Hmm.
research librarian, that has real meaning. But more than
Sure.
anything, what they told us was that we were entitled to be anything we were willing to work for. And
Hmm.
so,
Hmm.
as you pointed out, I've got a sister who's an anthropologist, a sister who's a biologist, a brother who's a social worker, a sister who's a judge, a brother who is figuring it out. But all of
Uh-huh.
us
Uh-huh.
come to the world with this curiosity and this hunger, but also
Yeah.
with the sense that we can do things. And it was because
Hmm.
my parents never, it wasn't that they didn't discipline us, but their
Hmm.
discipline was never about curtailing our ambition. It was about
Hmm.
honing our capacity to meet our intentions.
Yeah, no, it's incredible. In my family, my mother was the first in her family to go to college. My father grew up homeless. My mother's mother and father, they just graduated from sixth grade. They
Yeah,
were great. They were terrific. They were smart, whatever. But that's, that was the thing.
that was it.
But they just, well, my grandmother did say, she said, you're not going to play in the NBA. And cruelly, she told me that when I was about 11, which I thought
Okay.
that was a little early to break my dreams up like that. But so moving along a little bit, you go to Spelman in Atlanta, right? Terrific college. Just a quick little ad for historically black colleges and universities. I got turned on a few years back about trying to donate to those schools, and now I'm, including Spelman.
Thank
We
you.
have 37 historic. I'm not patting myself on the back because my mother and grandmother are the ones that just said you got to give it away, give it away, give it away as much as you can. But the thing for people listening and watching, whatever, about historically black colleges and universities, they really need the money. They need the help. This
Absolutely.
is a great place to consider. And 60% of the black doctors in this country originally come out of historically black colleges and universities, and 50% of lawyers. And I don't blame them for that part. But the doctor thing, but it's really, and they do need the money. And so that's a wonderful. But tell me about, so you along the way, you went to Spelman. You went to University of Texas and you went to Yale.
I did.
Tell me about that. So you've been to, those three, and what are the differences? What, if you want to get into that. I think it's an
Sure.
interesting, yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, Spelman was an extraordinary opportunity that I didn't want. My mom tricked me into going to Spelman.
Ah.
She told me just apply. I didn't want to go to school in the South. I didn't want to go to an all-girls school. I didn't want to go to an HBCU. But my
Hmm.
mom said, just apply. And then I applied and I got in, and she's like, just go visit. And once there, as someone who grew up in a community where I was absolutely in the minority, it was just a very different experience to not only be one, to be among people who looked like me and had similar experiences, but to be among people who had my race and my gender and who were so different. And I think that's one of the
Uh,
parts of going to an HBCU that gets lost. You may have phenotypic, similarities, but that lets you then get to the differences that so many others take for granted. And
mhm.
Spelman for me was a place where I really got to explore all of the things that were in my head. I ended up without an actual major. I was the first interdisciplinary studies major from Spelman because they just said pick something and go. So
Please get out of here. Yeah.
exactly. So I did political science and economics and sociology and ran amok, and then I got out.
That's a great thing, by the way, about schools. And I wish a
Yeah,
lot more of them would open up that way. And let's look at a lot of stuff. Yeah.
it was fun and it was fantastic and it helped me understand. So when I went to grad school at Texas, that the stadium at the University of Texas could hold the town I grew up in. I grew up in Gulfport,
Uh-huh.
Mississippi,
Uh-huh.
and the stadium could have held the whole population when I was growing up. So
Hmm.
Texas was a very different place to be at the
Uh-huh.
LBJ school, and that for
Uh-huh.
me was this very interesting juxtaposition of being from the South, but Texas is not the same as Mississippi. And then Yale
Hmm.
was like going to a different planet,
Hmm.
resource wise.
A good planet.
It was a good planet. It was just very
Hmm.
different.
Hmm.
And when you haven't grown up with that, I mean, when you described your parents and your grandparents, like when you don't grow up in that privilege, when you're not used to sitting next to someone named Rothschild, and it turns out, yes, they're one of those. Like you stop
Uh-huh.
asking, are you one of those when
Uh-huh.
you hear these famous
Uh-huh.
names? When
Right.
half of your class went to another Ivy and that
Prep
their
schools.
expectations are
Right.
different, it
Yeah.
helped
Yeah.
me really ground myself. I never got confused about who I was, but I finally had a chance to imagine things I'd never heard about. Like I was sitting in class when a friend of mine, a classmate, made $1 million on an IPO. I understood none of the letters in the conversation he was having with me,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
it was the
Hmm.
first time I had the proximity to that kind of privilege, but also the recognition that because of I could be near it, I could imagine it and I could possibly have it. I went the wrong way and never quite achieved their economic success, but it was extraordinary to have that juxtaposition in my life. And it really opened up for me that I shouldn't be bounded by any past
Sure.
history. I had the
Yeah.
privilege of figuring out what I wanted.
Right. And you had to be courageous, and I'm sure it made you nervous before you got there,
Oh yeah, it was.
I would
I
think. Even I'm probably going out to Texas, same thing.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
There are
Yep.
pictures of
Yep.
me when I
Yep.
had very short hair. This is something I don't normally talk about. I wore
Your hair
braids.
looks nice.
Well, thank you.
I think your hair looks nice. I just me. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, when I was in college, I wore braids, and when I
Uh-huh.
got to
Okay.
grad school, braids still. When I got to law school, I did not realize how nervous I was. And I was taking. You have to take out braids and you cut them so you can unravel them. And I decided to give myself a natural, basically a short afro, without thinking about the fact that I didn't know a single barber in New Haven, Connecticut,
Uh-huh.
and had to go to school the next day.
Well,
So
amazingly, in New Haven, you'd be just fine.
I
In New
was.
Haven, yeah,
It
yeah.
turns
You
out I
can get
was,
you can get your hair done there for sure. Yeah.
but I didn't know that. So it was
Hmm.
my my projection of my nervousness came through deciding to do a very dramatic haircut on myself, which I've never done again.
Yeah. Well, Connecticut's like a lot of states. People have don't quite understand how complicated the state is. They see it as sort of a. It's like my wife went to University of Wisconsin. People just go, she says, no, it's a lot more complicated than a
Well,
lot
I
more
didn't.
complicated.
My mom is a graduate. That's where she did her master's of library science, University of
Oh,
Wisconsin.
okay,
I was
okay,
born in
okay.
Madison.
All right. Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah, well, Sue would love you. Sue was such a crazy badger. So, just moving on to another, which I think is a passion of yours and an important passion, voting rights. And at one point in Georgia, the government canceled over 1 million voting registrations and making it more and more difficult. And that seems to be another thing that we're going to have to deal with
Yep.
in the near future. And then eventually, you and people working around you, given, and I think accurately, responsibility for helping Biden win in Georgia. 800,000 or whatever the number is, new voting registration. Let's just talk a little bit about voting rights because it's so crucial. I mean, that's a lever, man. It's just so important, and not in every state, but in most states. Just talk a little bit about that and your passion if you want to. Yeah, anytime you don't want to talk about something, I won't talk about that. I'm talking about something else. But let's get back to my book. Let's tell this coded justice thing some more. Come on, we can,
Well,
it's wonderful. I loved it. I really did. I really did love it. But go ahead, like on voting rights, if you don't mind.
no, and I'll lead that into code of justice and just the work that I do. Part of
Yeah.
voting rights, we think of democracy as this abstract concept, but both you and I come from families where the ability to have a say in how your community works changes how you feel about yourself and about
Mm-hmm.
your future.
Mm-hmm.
I come
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm.
voting rights because I'm the from the first generation in my family to be born with voting rights.
Yeah.
And my dad was arrested when he was 14 for registering Black people to vote in Mississippi. The right
Yeah.
to vote is the foundation for all of the other things. We can choose to use it or not, but it is how we measure our capacity for citizenship. If we
Mm-hmm.
have the right to say yes or no, we may not win, we may not get the people we want, but we should have a voice, and that voice is our vote. And it sounds basic, but it is so fundamental,
Oh, but
particularly when
basics are it, man.
exactly.
Basics. People
And
keep going. It's not a cliche to talk about blocking and tackling if you're
yes,
not blocking and tackling.
or if you've never had to worry about it. So when we
Yeah.
talk about people
Yes.
being purged and voter ID, no one disagrees that you should have to prove who you are. The question is,
Hmm.
how complicated should the proof be?
Yes. Yes.
Not an issue of whether you should be able to vote or not, but voting on a Tuesday in November might have been easy when everyone was a farmer. But now that you have on-call
Yeah.
scheduling, if you can't make it across town because the bus stopped, should you lose your right for the next 4 years to have a say in how your community operates? That's
Yes.
why I believe in voting rights, because
Yeah.
those of us
No,
who
a
enjoy
hundred
it,
percent. 100%. Things need to be where people can, I can do this. And it just, not just voting, putting anything, insurance forms,
yeah.
whatever. No, I'm sorry. Some of these forms, people in Yale couldn't go through them.
And
That's wrong. That's just a wrong thing.
it's wrong. And to your point about just the foundations, we are better people when we can help each other. And the more complicated we make the help, the harder it is to be
Yeah.
in community. And
Yeah.
that for me is the goal. How do we make it easier for us to like each other?
Yeah. Yeah, and to have and once again, this is a word that a lot of people don't think about much, how important it is and how empowered, people, oh yeah, empowered. Of course, well, it's hard to really understand what that means for a lot of people.
Well, no, did you say
Because
your father?
because a fair number of people are empowered up to it. They don't think about it.
Exactly.
Don't think about it.
You said it was it your father or your grandfather who grew up homeless?
My father.
Yeah. So under right now in Georgia, your father would have an extraordinarily difficult time being able to cast a ballot because the state of Georgia changed the rules last year or a couple of years ago to make it more difficult for homeless people to cast ballots. My
Yeah.
issue is if you want to end homelessness, you should hear from those who understand the problem and want to participate in creating change.
When I
And
say my father was homeless, he was actually grew up in a basically for homeless people. It's called the Pogey. So he and his mother
yeah,
lived in this, whatever. So they had a roof over their head, but that was where people who basically had no money were. Yeah.
right, but think about it. People who live in their cars, who have a place to park but don't have
Yes.
they have a roof over their heads. My concern when it comes to voting rights and why I urge people to go beyond the superficial and look
Yes.
at the administrative, the bureaucratic. It's what you write about, it's what I write about. The
Yeah.
devil is in the details. And when the
Yes.
details make it impossible for you or nearly impossible for you to participate unless you have to go through these Herculean tasks, then your democracy isn't real. And
Yeah.
we have to make it accessible. It doesn't have to be easy, but it shouldn't be hard.
Yeah. So I said we're going to talk about books. So let's
Yes.
talk about books. Let's start with Selena Montgomery. Who's that?
Lena Montgomery was my pen name for my first 8 novels. I wrote romantic suspense. I want, I love telling stories and I wanted to
Yeah.
write about falling in love after, usually there was a body count first. and whoever survived got to fall in love.
Okay, all right. So, but just talk a little bit about what drew you to writing books, to writing fiction. Did you read a lot of fiction growing up?
Absolutely. Yeah. So both
Yeah.
my mom as a librarian she
Yes.
would read to us every night. And my
My
dad,
mother worked in a library too. We were the
yes.
teacher and work. Yeah, but go ahead. I'm sorry. Yeah.
No, no, it's okay. But you appreciate it. Like when you are surrounded by, when you are raised by someone who loves words, you love words. And my mom was an
Hmm.
avid reader. My dad struggled to read, but loved reading. But he would tell us these amazing stories. I like to, he would have to tell us stories on Fridays. He worked at a shipyard, so he wasn't there to put us at bed at night. But on Fridays, he would, we gather all together and he would tell us a bedtime story. And he had to, calibrate it for 6 kids. So it was kind of a G-rated version of Game of Thrones because you had fighter pilots and fairies and all kinds of stuff happening as he tried to tell a
Hmm.
story we all wanted to hear. But because of both of them, I grew up just loving the act and the art of storytelling, but
Hmm.
also the ability to read a good book and find beautiful words. And I joke that when you're a kid and you tell stories, you're a liar, but when you write them down, you're an author. And so I decided to write them down.
How's Georgia doing with kids reading at grade level stuff like that?
It continues to be a challenge. We
Yeah.
are not the worst, but we aren't nearly where we should be. And
Connect with me a little bit at some point after this, and because I work with the University of Florida, they have a program that works. Florida, I mean, Florida takes a lot of baloney, and some of it they deserve, but the percentage of Black kids reading in Florida, it's the highest in the country. Same with Latino kids. They actually have something that they can take the numbers from the 40s into the 70s and
that's
80s,
amazing.
and
I'd
that
love
will
to hear
say,
about it.
no, it's more than amazing. It's life-saving
Oh, absolutely.
because, as you know, and once again, I don't care whether we're preparing kids to go to Yale, but get them be competent readers so they can get through high school.
Well,
They get through high school, they got some choices, they got some chances, you can go
well,
from there.
and you mentioned it at the top of the conversation. My parents believe that we had the right to explore the world, and that happens through reading. When you
Hmm.
can walk into a space and feel confident that you understand what's happening around you, that
Yeah,
changes everything, and
yeah,
reading gives you that.
yeah. And you can find out about things. You really can. You can go, okay, what would it be like? Don't guess if it can, one of the things like with arts, and one of the things we always try to do, bring him up, is just keep opening doors for him.
Exactly.
Just, what about this? Hudson, I'm looking at the Hudson River. Tell me about this river or whatever. So, all right, so let's go to coded justice. Um, and how, if I don't know if it has, as you know, I've done a few books with, I don't know if you dealt with President Clinton,
Yes, I do.
and he brings, authenticity to the books I do with him. And Dolly Parton, once again, that kind of book. It was country western, and he brought the same thing. So you have all this experience in politics, and Avery Keene, comes out of that world. How does that influence, like, let's say the Avery Keene novels?
So I wanted Avery to be in the space of being a lawyer because that was my first thing. I was a
Yeah.
lawyer. I wanted her to be in politics, but politics adjacent, and I wanted her to be able to navigate multiple worlds. But most importantly, I wanted her to be someone who had responsibility but no authority.
Hmm.
And you and
Hmm.
I both know when your characters have power and authority, they navigate in a different way. But when they don't, that's when you have to be ingenious. That's when you have to be sly. That's when you have to be clever. And I wanted her to learn with the audience about the politics that she was grappling with. I wanted her to learn with the audience about the power she had that she didn't know about. And
Hmm.
we sometimes see politics as so distant from our lived experience. For me, I wanted Avery Keene to help us get inside there. Like these people are doing stuff that affects you. So she's my invitation to the rest of the world to come in and understand politics, but to have fun with it, to
Hmm. Hmm.
hear all the acronyms and realize that this is really how it happens. But also when you're
Hmm.
done, to leave the novel feeling a little bit more in control of the world you're a part of.
Hmm. And understanding stuff a little better. So
Exactly.
in coded justice, a lot of you have a cyber attack which threatens the legal system. You get into, which is an interesting area, the dangers of artificial intelligence. You deal with healthcare rights for veterans, which I'm very interested in as well. Let's talk about how some of that works in the novel.
I want
And one notion is, can, in the real world, but also in the novel, the notion, can the legal system keep up with the evolving digital world? I mean, I don't know. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but
Well, and it was one of the reasons I wanted to write the book. AI is moving so quickly. A
hmm
few weeks ago, when the mega bill was moving, there was this moratorium that was inserted in the House version. It came out in the Senate version, but would have said that state and local legislators cannot regulate AI for a decade. I want people to remember 10 years ago, did you know what Chat GPT was? We didn't.
hmm
And if this moratorium had taken effect, if they try to do it again, it's basically saying we don't get to regulate a technology that can transform everything about how we live. And
yeah,
so the first goal with coded justice, I want people to feel comfortable. We need to be cautious about it, but it's hard. It goes back to reading. You got to know what you're afraid of, but you also have to know what it's capable of. And this is a
yes,
powerful technology. The second
yes.
part was I wanted it to feel
Yeah, I mean,
accessible.
to genuinely understand within reason
Exactly.
what are the good things that can happen, and to
Yeah,
genuinely understand what the dangers are. The same with the internet, which we
exactly.
didn't seem to really figure that one out too
Exactly.
well.
Exactly. We didn't regulate it because we thought, and let's understand, regulation does not mean stopping. Regulation means asking questions and
Yeah.
making sure we have some ability when we don't like the answer to do something about it.
Yeah,
That's what regulation
unfortunately,
is,
you say that and I say that, but it doesn't necessarily happen that way when we get to political bodies.
which is why I did this book. Because the second part is what's the one thing we all have in common is that we need healthcare. And the most sympathetic population that is entitled to government provided healthcare are veterans.
Yeah.
And yet they are the most complicated patients that we can imagine. And the reason I wanted to use veterans is I also want to talk about diversity, equity, inclusion, DEI, which is getting a bad rap from some, you know,
Yeah.
of some cynics. But all it means is that we actually think about what happens to people, what happens when communities are different, but they're pulled together and then they
Yeah.
need healthcare. And those are
Yeah.
our veterans. And if AI can make it easier to serve them, that's a good. But what happens when we haven't asked the questions about why we haven't served them already? And that goes to
hmm
the
hmm
politics of it.
hmm hmm
And so Avery comes in because she's trying to help this company go public, but at the same time, they've got to deal with the political realities and the legal realities of a technology most of us don't understand.
Yeah. Right. They're fascinating. One of my favorite characters in the book, and you can talk about the character by the name of Milo.
Yes.
Tell us about Milo and writing about Milo.
Milo is the basically the large language model, the LLM. He's the chat bot that helps run the clinic where all of our veterans are getting serviced. And
hmm
Milo is a snarky, hyper intellectually superior technology that does not necessarily respect those it works for. And so and if you've ever tried to use Chat GPT or Claude or Perplexity, sometimes you ask questions and you appreciate the answers, and sometimes you think that the AI is mocking you a little bit. Well,
Uh-huh.
Milo has been trained.
Mm.
Its alignment, its training is supposed to be that it should act like a doctor. But what happens when we train technology to think like a doctor? Because sometimes doctors think they will go beyond what we think they should, or they know more
When
than
they
we
talk
do.
in doctor talk, yes.
Exactly. And so
Yeah.
Milo tries to help, and we've all had people who try to help us too much. And so Milo is both technology and a character in the novel.
In your life, do you use artificial intelligence much?
I'm using it more. In fact, because of this
hmm
book, I didn't use it before because I was concerned. I didn't know enough. And so one of the reasons I love writing is it gives me an excuse to go learn stuff. So I spent a few months reading everything I could about AI, doing a short course. MIT had this short course on their website that I took. I listened to a lot of podcasts and became very afraid of some of the people we live on this planet with. But I am I emerged feeling more
That's why you live
comfortable.
in your office there. Yes, never
Exactly.
leaves. Yeah.
But that's, AI should raise our eyebrows and raise our concerns. It should not scare us, but we shouldn't be blithe. It's a tool, like every other tool. Tools can be used to help us and they can be turned into weapons. And we
Yeah.
need to understand this tool because it is literally everywhere.
There's one thing, similarities you mentioned, Alex Cross and Avery Keene, and one of the things about Alex, I don't know if people think about this, but I do because this is what drives the Cross stuff, and it's this thing of balancing your work life with your family life, and there's on uh, Amazon now, the series, and Aldous Hodge plays the Alex Cross. And one of the great things about Aldous is he's very intense. So he really can get the work part and he feels so intense, but he's also great with kids. So you really feel that balance between, or the trying to balance between this very difficult work life, which isn't realistic, but for police it's a very difficult life, and then the family life. And Avery also has to balance sort of work life and her personal life. How's that? How's that?
Avery has a complicated family. So her father passed away when she was a teenager. Her mother was a drug addict who also turns out has mental health challenges. And so she's trying to navigate being a caretaker for the person who should have taken care of her. She has this found family, her best friend Ling, her boyfriend Jared, and her former lawyer, now friend Noah. And even there, they work with her when she brings them in, but they challenge her. And sometimes it's like, do you want to take your spouse to work? Do you want to take your best friend to work with you?
Hmm.
And to your point about balance, sometimes it's balance isn't possible. I tend to go with the idea of work life Jenga. Balance is never going to happen, but if you can at least figure out what's going to fall apart, you can rebuild it when it happens.
Hmm. You know, there's so many when people are sort of a little well-known actors and athletes and whatever, writers to some extent, it becomes hard for people to see them as human beings, which I wish we could do more of that. And just in general, you can just say, well, it's a human being here. How are we doing these nasty attacks on this person? No, this is a real person, you know. So, how did you feel when one of your nonfiction books, Our Time Is Now, was banned at the Naval Academy as a human being?
It it was deeply discomforting. I mean, look, I love learning. I love knowledge. I love this country. And to be told that my book was too dangerous for the US Naval Academy
Uh-huh.
that took my books off the shelf, but kept Mein Kampf by Hitler. My book is Our Time Is Now: Power, Purpose, and the Fight for a Fair America. I talk about how we should better use our democracy to serve as many people as possible.
Hmm.
And when the edict comes down from the president that there are certain things we shouldn't know, and your book is number 11 on the list of examples, that it was out, it made me angry, but it also
Hmm.
made me determined because clearly I'm saying things that somebody's concerned about, which means I must be saying them well.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, I've had, in particular, Maximum Ride. I don't think it was banned at the Naval Academy, but it's been banned, and that's like insanity. You know, 30,000 kids have read it. They're all
Yeah.
fine, and there's nothing dangerous in the book. I think the other thing about in book, I won't get into book banning much, but the notion that one person can walk into a district who hasn't read the book and get it banned, that's like beyond crazy.
Well,
Um, so we're going through this tough time now. A lot of stuff going on, a lot of changes that, some of the areas, yeah, okay, we need to do something there, we need to do something there, but not what you're doing. Just your thoughts right now, but how do we kind of move through this morass? How are you moving through it? How do you
I,
help people, your friends and neighbors and whatever, to kind of move forward and keep your chin up and all that stuff?
I start with reminding us that before we had money or power or position, we had each other. And my parents raised us with three jobs: go to church, go to school, take care of each other. If you
Hmm.
hold to
Hmm.
those foundations, to faith, to learning and knowledge, to
Yeah.
service, it's a lot easier to remember how to get through the day. But then we have a
Hmm.
second layer of responsibility, and that is if we love this country, then we should be doing the things that we believe are necessary to make it its best version of itself. And so if
Yeah.
you're outraged by something, if you're offended by something, the question is, are you offended because it curtails your freedom or because it invites someone else to have more freedom? we have to start asking ourselves what we're willing to allow. What freedoms are we willing to sacrifice in exchange for convenience? What comforts are we willing to claim in exchange for someone else's humanity? And what I
Hmm.
remind people of is we've been through these times before. Heather
Yeah.
Cox Richardson writes beautifully about sort of reminding us that this feels new, but it isn't new. And
Hmm.
we do best when we remember who we are and why we're here, and we're willing to pool our common resources. So to your point of how to keep your chin up, make sure you're sitting with somebody. Make sure you're reaching out, you're
Yeah.
calling those who are feeling overwhelmed, even if it's you being overwhelmed. But instead of calling to complain, call to
Yeah.
ask, how can I help? Ask
Yeah.
someone what they need, because there's nothing more uplifting than the ability to help someone else be better than they were the moment before.
Yeah. One of the useful tools, getting back to your book, this is a tool to help. And because some people now, they'll sit there and they'll watch whatever, the left or the right, and just glue themselves to the television all day long. I'm sure there are going to be studies at some point, and people are going to go, man, that really, because that's a lot of toxic stuff. To just be,
Absolutely.
turn it off from time to time. It's okay. Turn it off.
Well, turn it off.
Yeah,
Turn it off and remember that we're people first. We may have partisan beliefs. I certainly do. But my first job is to people. My second job is to my party.
mhm.
And the party I'm a part of, it's because I like their principles.
What a
But
delightful thing that would be if everybody in Congress and whatever was just voting their conscience, whatever that might be. And where does your conscience take you? Well, fine, vote that way. That'd be
there you
nice.
go. There
It's
you go.
not happening. It used to happen, I think, a little more. Vote your conscience. That's yeah. Ooh, ooh, big thought, right? What else? What didn't I? What have I missed? Anything?
No, well, I have a question for you. What
Sure.
do you love the most about being a writer? Like you are so extraordinarily prolific, and you have
And
explored all
talented
of these.
too. I
You
hate
are
that word.
absolutely.
Prolific is my least favorite word. You know, somebody said you're lucky if you find something you love to do in life. And then it is a miracle if you get paid, if that can be your job and it's not a job. I don't work for a living. I play for a living. Um, these interviews I do because I like meeting people for half an hour, 40 minutes, whatever the heck it is. So this is great. I got to meet Stacey and we talked for a little bit. And and I've got to meet, I don't know, 20 or 30 people already through these interviews. And it's great. And hopefully we try to keep them human to human. Try not to get into politics too much, because I just want to get into it with the person, talk about books a little bit, not profit. I don't try to get up on any podium to tell people what to think. Yeah, I don't know if that answered the question, but I don't work at it. It's all, just did a nonfiction, the um, Idaho 4, about the terrible murders out
Yeah.
in Idaho. At first I didn't want to do it. And then I got together with Vicky Ward and we started talking about it. And we said, we don't write about Kohlberger. We don't want to write one of these, what a brilliant murderer we have, and he's a smart man, unfortunately, and whatever crazy or whatever his deal is. But what we wanted to do was to capture the tragedy to these small towns, two small towns. You talk about your small town. Well, Moscow, Idaho, and Pullman, Washington, where Washington State is, two small towns, two college towns, relatively innocent. Not much had happened there, and all the people living in those towns, their lives will never be the same. The families' lives never be the same. The students, their lives, they're never going to. Those scars will not heal. I mean, they'll heal somewhat, but they're not going to heal. So I wanted to write about that and get people to think about that side of tragedies rather than, since there's a documentary on Prime too, and what I like about it is it's not sensational. It's really about the people and the tragedy in their lives and trying to get people to understand. I don't, to me, and most of the nonfiction, I do this series with Matt Eversman, Walk in My Combat Boots, and we did one on ER nurses, and we're doing one on teachers now. And our notion is that when you get done reading these books, you will understand something that you thought you understood and you didn't
Yes.
understand.
Yes.
Where you'll come out of it going like, oh, I thought I understand ER nurse. No, you had no idea. I don't know how anybody survives being an ER nurse. It's unbelievable. Day in and day out, again and again, every curtain they pull back is another emergency. I don't know how people do it. It's an amazing
Yeah.
story. Teachers, my mother was a teacher. I don't know how, it's just, I mean, you got the left after them, you got the right after them, you got the kids acting up more than they ever have. You have some parents, you have lawsuits. You have somebody telling you how to teach it's like very, very difficult. And I don't know that we appreciate that. But I like the notion of letting people get in the shoes of these folks and go, okay, I really hadn't, I'm not giving teachers the credit that we should be. This is another one of these fields, same with nurses, where thank you for your service.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable what you're doing, unbelievable. And we don't, we're not giving people credit in certain areas that they really deserve and need. So yeah,
Completely agree.
all that stuff. So anyway, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you for the time. Thank
This
you
was an
for
honor.
inviting me in. Thank you for giving me a beautiful weekend with Code of Justice.
Thank
This is terrific. You've done it again. I love the character. So